What if you could walk into a voting booth and vote for nobody? Well, back in 2013, a massive court case gave over 900 million Indian voters that exact power. So let's get into the story of how the simple act of saying nope became a fundamental right. Okay, so picture this. You're standing in the voting booth, you're ready to do your democratic duty, you look at the list of candidates and, what if you just don't support any of them? I mean, what are you supposed to do then? It's a classic dilemma, right? One that voters have faced pretty much everywhere. Well, for a long, long time, that dilemma had some pretty limited answers. If you wanted your voice to be heard, you kind of had to pick somebody, even if it felt like you were making a choice of none. Yeah, for decades in India, the choice was basically black and white. You either picked a candidate from the list or you just stayed home. There was no official way, nothing on the books, to go to the polls and say, hey, I reject all of these options. Your disapproval, it was totally invisible. You couldn't tell the difference between someone unhappy with the choices and someone who just didn't care to vote. But all that was about to change. See, a pivotal legal challenge back in 2013 wasn't just about adding another button to the machine. No way. It was a complete legal game changer that was about to redefine what it even means to vote. All right, so the case itself was People's Union for Civil Liberties versus the Union of India. And in 2013, it led to something pretty incredible, the introduction of the none of the above option. You know, what is NOTA. But look, the what is simple, right? It's the how. How the court got to that decision. That's the really fascinating part. Okay, so this is where things get really interesting. The court didn't just pull a new rule out of thin air. Nope, it reinterpreted a fundamental right that was basically hiding in plain sight. Seriously, the legal reasoning here was just brilliant. So, at the very heart of this whole thing is Article 19(11)(a) of the Indian Constitution. You can think of it as the bedrock of free speech in the country. It's the part that guarantees every single citizen the freedom of speech and expression. Okay, but what on earth does that have to do with a voting machine? Well, here's the genius move. The Supreme Court made this incredibly powerful connection. It argued that voting, it isn't just some mechanical act of pushing a button. No, it is an act of expression. Your vote, or even your choice to not vote for any of the candidates, is a form of speech. And check this out. This quote from the ruling just says it all. The court declared, and I'm quoting here, that a positive right not to vote is part of a voter's right to expression. Wow. So this wasn't about spoiling your ballot or just being difficult. This was about making a statement that was now protected by the Constitution itself. Let me put it this way. Staying home on Election Day, that could just look like you don't care, right? Apathy. But walking into that booth and deliberately pressing the NOTA button, oh, that is not silence. That is an active, deliberate, and importantly, counted statement of dissent. You're using your voice to say, loud and clear, none of you have earned my vote. Okay, so the court lays down this incredibly powerful legal idea. But how did that actually become a reality for hundreds of millions of voters? Let's take a look at the practical steps that made it happen. You know, the process was actually pretty swift and direct. First, boom, you get the Supreme Court's landmark ruling. Then, based on that, the court tells the Election Commission of India, hey, make this happen. And the commission did just that. They made sure a brand new button, the NOTA button, showed up as the very last option on every single electronic voting machine all across the country. All right, so let's zoom out a little bit. When we look at the big picture, what's the real legacy of this decision? What does this right to reject actually mean for a democracy? I mean, this ruling was about so much more than just an extra button. It officially confirmed that your vote is your voice. It gave voters a real formal tool to register their discontent. It recognized that a healthy democracy has to include the right to say no to all the options you're given. And really, at the end of the day, it empowered every citizen by expanding their democratic choice in a huge way. So the big takeaway here is pretty profound. The NOTA option literally transformed the ballot from just a simple checklist into a powerful platform for expression. It made sure that even a vote for no one sends a really, really powerful message. And that leaves us with one last thing to chew on. When a whole lot of people can officially and visibly say none of the above, how does that really change things? How does it change the pressure on political parties, the kinds of candidates they choose to run, and maybe even the very nature of an election itself? It's definitely something to think about.